everything that she said was me. We're exactly the same age. We had 2 pregnancies and had gotten sick both
Wait,
times.
you know I have 2
And
pregnancies? You
yep, I know.
Alisa just finished our program about a week ago. I don't know what the heck she's gonna say, but I would love, like, a physician who came through just to experience it, and then your unique feedback to other patients out there, because you came in as a patient, but you also have the background as a physician, so I'm really excited to hear from you.
My name is Alisa Nance, and I am 53 years old, and I was a family physician for 20 years, but became disabled in 2017. I'm a mom of 2 sons who have autoimmunity, and my symptoms all began when I was a resident in family medicine training, and I had just had a baby, and I developed severe arthritis of my feet. Then, subsequent to that, I was actually diagnosed with Crohn's, Hashimoto's, and dysautonomia with encephalitis. And that's what took me out of practice.
And you've been dealing with this for decades.
Yes. I started having symptoms 30 years ago.
And as a family physician yourself, I'm sure you were constantly thinking to yourself, I know medicine, I should be able to figure this out.
Yeah.
But you were never able to help yourself. In fact, your symptoms kept getting worse and you kept adding on more diagnoses.
That's correct. And I think the hardest thing of all is when my children developed illness.
Yeah.
I felt sort of like the cobbler's children with no shoes. It was the family doctor's children with no health. And we have searched and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to come up with names of all this autoimmune problem, and still are very, very sick and have multiple treatments that help us. At least we're vertical now. We used to be horizontal all the time, but the treatments have us functioning, but they definitely don't have us healed. And I was looking desperately for anything possible because I was kind of at the end of my rope. I'm on the maximum amount of medication that's available. And I was like, I've got to find a way to heal myself. And a lot of the things that the Transform program has are things that I've tried, but I've never tried them together or in a certain order that Dr. Maggie has perfected.
Well, I want to hear more about how you connected the dots and you found Dr. Maggie and what it was that you thought, because I know that this is very powerful.
I was secret shopping, or stalking was probably a better word, through Facebook, looking for alternative treatments related to my autoimmunity. And then all of a sudden, this advertisement or video came up of Dr. Maggie, and I just watched her, and everything that she said was me. It was
Mhm.
exactly me. In fact, we're exactly the same age. We had a similar timeline of events where we had acceleration of our autoimmunity related to pregnancies. We had 2 pregnancies and had gotten sick both times.
Wait, you know I have 2
And
pregnancies? You
yep, I know.
okay,
I know.
keep going.
And and so when I was watching her, I said, "This is me." And I
Wow,
was so impressed,
wow.
probably most of all of her vulnerability. But she practiced medicine, then she got sick, then she used her knowledge to learn a new route to heal herself. And I was so grateful that she had combined both traditional medicine and functional medicine to come up with a perfect plan, that it doesn't really matter what your title of your autoimmunity is, it will help all of it, even if you don't have a title. So I was so impressed by that.
I wanna bring up this point here, and I'm gonna ask the audience too, because the thing is, I mean, people don't realize that in medical school, majority of our training is actually spent on how do we name something? How do we name something? What tests do we run to name something? And here's the thing is if you can't name it, then it probably isn't real. That's one of the biggest things. If you have been searching for a diagnosis, um, people think like that's the be all end all. That's a lot of times people think that's the end of the journey. Like, I got my diagnosis, now I can get help. But you and I know, I mean, Alisa, how many of your symptoms fit into a diagnosis? How many of our symptoms for autoimmunity even have a diagnosis or a testable answer?
Sometimes they have a name, but there's no test to prove it. In fact, I had POTS for a long, long time, but was told I didn't. And I had all the criteria. I went through tilt table tests,
Mm.
and they said no, that it was all dehydration.
Dehydration don't cause chronic POTS. Come on.
Right.
It makes it worse
Exactly.
though. Yes.
Makes it worse.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the same thing. I'm gonna tell you guys here something really importantly. I'm going so far out the limb to say that your diagnosis doesn't matter. Be- because I wasted many years of my life looking for a diagnosis. And if I had spent 10% of that energy in learning how to solve what was feeding this problem in the first place, I would have been a lot better a lot sooner. So for me, being able to deal with what's causing problems sooner, in hindsight, probably is the biggest piece of wisdom I have is stop looking for the diagnosis sooner
Yeah.
and start focusing on what's fueling the problem sooner. And you can actually, that's sooner is better, period. Right? People literally go to doctor to doctor to doctor, testing, looking for a diagnosis. And here's the problem: when you do find a diagnosis, that's not the solution. That's just, oh, now that you have this box, this name of diagnosis, you can qualify for this medication or this surgery. That's really it. Or the referral to the next doc. And
Mhm.
that's all it is. And the thing is, if medication alone solved the problem, then you know what? Taking birth control pills, antidepressants, pain medication, neuropathy medications would have solved my problems, but it didn't. I mean, I found myself at around what age was I? Around 36 to 38, just getting fatter, meaner, and madder.
Mhm.
Like seriously, it was just getting worse and worse. And I took all those pills that I was prescribing to all those women that came in with very similar type of symptoms. So, question for you, Alisa. So, as a physician, what was it like starting to go to all your physician colleagues now with all your myriad of symptoms?
Becoming the patient was very difficult because I wanted to make sure that I could have the answer. So when I went to the doctor, a lot of times they would say, "Well, what do you think we should do?"
Yep.
And I'm like, "Well, I would like to be the patient and not have to come up with the ideas because I'm researching and researching." The other thing too is that as you continue to search and you don't correct the problem, you develop more and more autoimmunity. And
Yeah.
so they kind of stack on each other. And honestly, I had one guy tell me, he said, autoimmune diseases are like Pringles. You can't just have one.
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, I now have seven. So what do I do about all of that? So they do kind of stack up the longer you stay in disarray of your body and not heal the inflammation and the autoimmune attack.
Well, there's also a hereditary component with which we, as the person with the seven diagnoses or seven stack of symptoms, have children now with these mystery symptoms. Tons of allergy problems, tons of IBS problems, tons of sensory processing, neurological, mental health struggles that our kids will have, skin issues, you name it. So not only can we not deal with ourselves, we have children now with problems we can't solve either.
That's correct. And I think that's the hardest thing, seeing my children develop worsening and worsening autoimmunity.
I'm curious now that your POTS is gone, now that your headaches are gone, now that you're being able to help your children, you're getting your life back. How do you rate the value of the program?
Well, I'll tell you, I've spent, like I said, close to $300,000 in my lifetime trying to be well or have a relief of symptoms. And I think what Dr. Maggie's program offers for the price of that is far better. It outweighs anything that I've chased my entire disease life. It's so worth it.
Elisa, I would love to ask your opinion as a physician and mother of children with autoimmune or chronic disease issues that you know now are genetic and are linked to many of the things you've learned. How do you think your ability now would be to help your children? I know they're grown, but what's your ability now?
I think they have seen the improvement in me,
Mhm.
and I have the knowledge now that if I had the testing, I feel very confident that I would be able to use that knowledge to help them. And I also feel like my older son, he's like, "Mom, what if you stop feeling better after a few months?" And I said, "Well, if I did, I know now that it would be because I didn't stick to the program and I would know how to get back on track." And so I'm very excited that I'm hoping that they will participate as much as I did. And I think as they see me as an example, I think it will be a better chance that they'll do it. When you go through medical school and you have lots of teaching and lots of stuff thrown at you, and you just have to absorb what you can and spend hours and hours to master information, Maggie is so gracious. And I will say that she's very firm. And I think some of that firmness is because she really wants you to learn it, and she really wants to make an impact of every single person in her program and have them be successful. This is a wonderful quote. She goes, "I'm not gonna just throw fish at you. I want you to be a fisherman of knowledge. I want you to fish for your own knowledge." And I'll tell you, that was so impactful to me because I was like, yeah, because if my whole career, I just told people stuff. In fact, they would come and say, "Hey, I need a pill because I'm not going to change my diet." And I'd be like, "Well, I think we need to work on diet first." And but they never would. So then I'm eventually saying, "Okay, well, they're going to get heart disease if I don't give them this cholesterol medicine." But it was kind of backwards. I should be more intent on making them change their lifestyle so that I didn't even need medication. And
Well,
that's where Maggie is bringing all of that information to you firsthand.
I think without pressure, without a challenge, there is no opportunity. I had pressure, which was my life. If I didn't do this for me, it was my life. It was my kids, right? So that's plenty of leverage for me. But at the same time, in a learning environment, I also think it's really helpful to be doing this in a community so that there is also accountability. That's a form of leverage, right? So we need pressure, we need challenge in order to seize the opportunity in those results, period.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I guess I'm curious now, how has this experience changed your focus moving forward in the world of medicine?
I definitely think if I returned to work, I would have a totally different approach. I would definitely take a more holistic approach. And I did a lot of that in a subtle way, not to the extent that Dr. Maggie knows, but I was more holistic about their emotion. I knew a lot about their personal lives. I, tried to get them help to help with their mindset, which we haven't really talked about. But I think mindset is just such a integral part of healing. And I did a lot of that with my own patients, but I think I would do more. And I
Mhm.
would do definitely more in lifestyle modification. When they make a joke in med school that if lifestyle is a multiple choice, it's the one that's correct. So always pick it. And I always found that ironic because I was like, well, lifestyle or lifestyle modification is always the right answer. Why don't I know much about how to tell
I,
people
I had 30
that?
minutes of training in my entire med school career on lifestyle. I
Yeah,
had no training on supplements. I had no training on exercise, diet, like none of it. The only reason I got any blood sugar training was when I got diabetes during my pregnancy. That was my first
right.
experience of learning anything nutrition, was being sick with diabetes during my pregnancy. And I'm a
Um,
physician who's prescribing meds all day for diabetes.
Yes.
That's
And
bullshit.
I also would keep a more open mind. Before I went to med school, I went to pharmacy school, and so I did a lot of training on supplements in pharmacy school. And so people would come and say, "Hey, I only want supplements. What should I do?" Now, I didn't have functional medicine training, but I did use supplements in my practice, and I feel like they have just a very big part in certain people's health. And so I'm excited to learn more and more about that.
Well, Lisa, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank you for secret shopping the program. I'm glad I didn't know you were a physician while we were going through it. So I behaved as my normal, as my normal sneaky, spooky
Yes,
self, I guess.
it
And
was amazing.
thank you so much. And if anybody wants to learn more, there's a link above this video, and there's going to be a link we'll put in the comment section for you to just start a chat with our team. Thanks, everybody.